Story 1. Everyone is obsessed with celebrity pedophile rings, but almost all sexual abuse is perpetrated by a family member or neighbor. All the talk of "for the kids" does almost nothing to actually alleviate the problem. Only education and mental health care can stop the cycle. Story 2. Americans do not really seem to have any idea how messed up the cartel situation in Mexico is. It is wild that people have been getting mutilated in horrific ways and being put on gruesome display for several years now. Not to mention the extortion, intimidation, and plain old homicide. But people's response to that seems to be a half-hearted, "Oh, that is unfortunate. They are our political allies and our neighbors," but very few people seem to care about their plight. Story 3. There are orphanages full of unadoptable children in several countries around the world. Why are they unadoptable? Because they were abandoned by or rescued from child sex trafficking. They are deeply scarred emotionally and infected with sexually transmitted diseases, often more than one. Not many people look to adopt at all. Even fewer are willing to take on children with disabilities. Severely affected and dying children have virtually no chance at all. Story 4. The attack on intellectualism in the United States, while not a new problem, has been ramping up. Before you accuse me of fearmongering or being a liberal crybaby, this is on both sides of the political spectrum. This is especially problematic when fundamentalists get involved. Before you say something about Christianity, know that this happens in other religions too, and even some subgroups of mainline religions like Roman Catholics have called out their fundamentalist counterparts, even calling them heretics. For example, when it comes to climate change, even Roman Catholics have pleaded for people to protect the earth. Check out Isaiah 24. It has been used by many mainline Christians, both Catholics and Protestants, to explain the dangers of climate change. That's not all. Many recent bans on literary works are clearly targeting those who are brutally honest in calling out society for silencing voices. Whoever said the United States is a kleptocracy wasn't kidding. Some state governments have started to fight back by calling out the rise of authoritarianism because it is a clear attack against intellectuals willing to stand up for the truth. Many have passed laws that made some authoritarian tactics, like banning books, illegal, citing "that's what tyrants do." They ban knowledge. Story 5. That the American middle class is struggling, but by global standards, they live lives of unimaginable luxury and leisure. The global median income is $3,900 a year, and half of the world's population controls only 2% of the world's wealth. Story 6. We're all going to die, nothing we do actually matters, and will be forgotten by the third generation as if we were never here. This is all age-old. What's modern is that the human population is so large, we're that much more insignificant as individuals. Just another number, another cog in the machine. A slightly different copy of another. Story 7. If a magic wand was waved and all carbon emissions went to zero, the climate change situation is too far along to stop. In the next 30 years, about 2 billion people will be displaced due to lethal wet bulb temperatures where you sweat endlessly but can't cool off and just overheat and die. Story 8. We were fooled into believing individual actions can change systems. You can be a thrifty vegan who didn't produce any waste and avoided consuming plastic in the last 10 years. But it's all for nothing if you don't actively fight to change the system. Your own consumption has no global impact whatsoever. A person eating from single-use plastic containers every day, but who organizes and lobbies to change laws, is doing way more than you. Also, while we should absolutely continue to try to systemically reduce and rethink our consuming behaviors by changing laws that will fund research into new materials and make manufacturing plastics illegal, for example, the time has come to start also preparing for the impending climate disasters. We are past the solution goalpost. We need to save what's possible while also preparing for what's already coming. Story 9. The majority of the global population lives in various states of poverty and exploitation under a system of exploitation maintained by a small cartel of capital-holding Western nations, and this system also stands directly in the way of anything resembling an appropriate climate response. As a result, significant losses in the agricultural capacity of several nations are virtually assured to occur by 2040. Story 10. The number of miscarriages that women experience when trying to have children happens frequently, but nobody talks about it. Men, in particular, are completely unaware. Story 11. In the United States, it's car dependence. Most problems in the United States can be linked to it. Social isolation in the suburbs, lack of community spaces, microplastics from tires, other health issues due to immobility, sprawl destroying the environment, a lack of housing due to demand for suburban homes, higher prices due to parking lot minimums, literal wars being fought to keep oil prices low, and of course, global warming. People identify so much with their cars at this point that the mention of any alternative system drives people nuts. Story 12. That people have become so reliant on media recommendations online that the majority of people are quickly becoming less and less capable of finding things for themselves and less discerning of new information brought to them. Story 13. There are entire nation-states, or at least large parts of them, engaged in online scamming. That pretty, big-breasted, vaguely Asian-looking girl who messaged you on social media? Most likely, the person behind that is a slave working in a scam call center in some lawless area of a country who gets a regular beating if he or she doesn't get you to hand over your life savings to a fake cryptocurrency account. And yes, people do talk about it, but the authorities in those countries either don't do anything or actually line their pockets with bribes from the scammers. I hate that it's come to this, but if I hear an Indian accent on a phone call, I assume it's a scam and hang up. I look at the Facebook friends of someone who reached out to me saying, "I found your profile and you seem nice," and see that they've got 450 friends in Ghana and maybe a few older men in the West who have probably already lost money to these scammers. There's an entire cottage industry of scam bait channels like Kitboga, Scammer Payback, Pleasant Green, and others who are making a living trying to shut down or at least mess with the scammers. Folks like Jim Browning are doing important work against them, but he's only one of a few battling $100 million industries. Story 14. Endless consumerism is unsustainable. Most jobs are meaningless jobs, and people are addicted to buying useless plastic items they don't need, and it's harming the planet. However, if we stop all of that, everything also deteriorates. But the super rich will enjoy lavish lifestyles no matter what. Story 15. How many parents are capable of harming their own children? It's staggering. Once you learn about it in depth, you're changed forever and feel like anyone you know could be a monster. Story 16. I have asked on message boards about people who have no friends and no family and how they live their life. I also wonder who will find their body when they die, assuming they do not work and do not live in a building. Story 17. That this is probably the downhill side of our civilization. Not a doomsayer, but we are not improving our brains as a species. Since that is our main evolutionary advantage, any loss of function is a loss of that advantage. Between lead and microplastics and who knows what in the environment, and our lack of emphasis on education and critical thinking worldwide, we stand a real risk of becoming a race of drooling idiots destroying ourselves with our own old technology. Also, we are completely insignificant to the universe. Story 18. Global warming is happening faster than even the pessimistic estimates, and we are burning through resources rapidly. The planet is not going to be able to sustain us at this level for much longer. Story 19. Post-9/11 wars have contributed to some 4.5 million deaths, report suggests, and this is from 2023. Story 20. Considering the average age of Redditors, it's likely that the vast majority of the people interacting on this thread will die of cancer. We're not funding the research for our own survival. Story 21. We create so much trash each day. Where does this frighteningly massive pile really go? Do we burn it down or shove it in the ocean? If we ship it to other countries, what do they do with it? How can each of us help besides recycling and composting? Story 22. The existence of plastic. We still have people alive now who were around before plastic was even a thing. Yet it has found itself in every organ in every animal in the world, in the deepest depths of the ocean. It's in your blood, your brain, your heart, your testicles, and ovaries. Humans have existed for 200,000 years, and plastic only began being mass-produced in the 1950s. And we still have no problem making this material that never truly decomposes. It's in the water you drink, all of the food you eat, because it's convenient. For now, it is an existential threat to all life on Earth. Yet no one cares, no one talks about it. Story 23. Slavery is ancient. Countries have risen and fallen on the backs of slaves, and it still goes on en masse today, but people still get mad at the United States for participating for a relatively short time. Story 24. Mass institutionalized murder of non-human mammals and birds. Numbers that make World War II look like a joke, in conditions that make concentration camps look like a playground. Story 25. We are about 20 minutes away from complete and utter Armageddon at any time. Just finished nuclear war. A scenario by Annie Jacobson. It is horrifying, and the reality is that at any moment it could all be over. No issue compares with that, not poverty, climate change, healthcare access, artificial intelligence, none of it. At the press of a button, it could all be over before I can finish an episode of Game of Thrones. Story 26. Overpopulation. It is what drove the rise of Donald Trump. It is what drives climate change and immigration. It is what drives water and resource shortages. It's what drives the extinction of species and the pollution of the environment. The problem is 8 billion plus humans on a planet that's geared to live happily with 2 billion or somewhat grumpily with 4 billion. Everything else is an offshoot of it. Story 27. Realpolitik. Nations act in their best interests, not because of friendliness and goodwill. Do not doubt that matters. But it is not the number one reason or priority. For example, if Russia ends the war tomorrow, within a few months to a year the European Union will start buying their energy again. Or how people conveniently forget the Chinese Communist Party's atrocities, child labor, oppressive social credit system, and constant mistreatment of other nations, and are immediately open to trading with them because a certain leader, who would look like an angel compared to Xi's regime, made a mean tweet in all caps. For example, the Philippines has been constantly threatened by China over disputed islands. They have used water cannons on fishermen in canoes, built airstrips on the islands they very clearly do not own, and flown their fighter jets over Philippine airspace, etc., for the last decade or so. Constant humiliation. And to this day, the Philippines' largest trading partner is, you guessed it, China. And as of a few days ago, they made a deal with China to remove missile systems. In exchange, China stops the harassment. I have seen this merry-go-round happen multiple times over the last decade. The reality is that nations will always prioritize their survival over principles or ideals. If the public hates it, they will hide it if they really need to. The world has been taking in energy from Russia despite sanctions via their shadow fleets. It could easily be stopped, yet they do not. If it hits the news, nations will make some temporary measure that they can easily get around. Why? Because it is cheap. People also do this subconsciously or unknowingly. Think about how much of your daily stuff from your iPhone, computer, cars, jewelry, etc. are made from less than ethical means. From child labor in China to rare earth minerals from Congo. People know this at some level, yet they do not care because it is essential to them. Story 28. According to Pentagon statistics, an average of 10,000 men are sexually assaulted by other men in the United States military each year. The vast majority are young, low-ranking men. Many claim assault on several occasions, or by multiple male offenders. 1 in 3 men described the assault as a form of hazing, bullying, or intimidation. As of 2019, the Department of Veterans Affairs officially recognized 61,000 male veterans as being traumatized sexually during their time of service. Although the number of male sexual assault claims filed each year continues to climb, it is estimated that 4 out of 5 never get reported. Story 29. Nobody talks about the prostitution rings and sex trafficking of female soldiers in the United States Army going on between Texas and Mexico. Looking at you, Fort Cavazos, formerly known as Fort Hood. Story 30. Our strive for greatness mentality is based on a button that says, press this and earn $10 million. But there is a 99% chance to be in debt forever instead. A bunch of careless freaks, idiots, or already rich people pressing it a lot, and the survivors selling us the How I Defeated the Odds handbooks. Story 31. The truth is that our societal systems in place protect abusers, and good people very quickly turn into enablers and useless bystanders. So we do not live in a just or safe world, no matter how much we want to believe in fairness and justice. Story 32. Medical malpractice is much more common than most people think. I know many people who were misdiagnosed, given improper treatment, and even people who died at the hands of doctors who had no business being doctors. Story 33. In Singapore, we do not have servants like high society people did 100 years ago. However, we have maids who come from developing countries, working for $300 a month, and they often have less well-being than servants. Story 34. Men's fashion peaked with the Nazis. It's all been downhill from there. We don't say it because they were the bad guys. We don't want to look like them because they were the bad guys. So we slipped into the downfall of activewear and smart casual as the norm. Not really that dark, just felt like a rant. Story 35. Government aid. Gives you food stamps. You get this much. Okay, you now get less because of reasons. Don't abuse it, don't be lazy. You get a job barely making anything. Okay, great, you're on your own, no more food stamps. Now you are going hungry. They make it so you can never get out of the hole. It's really draining.